Great to see you.
Nice to see you.
All right, please, on this side. And I have this for you.
Thanks for freshening up the water.
Well, that's what you think. You should see what I'm drinking on this side. So did they give you the rules, the rundown of the way this works? 4 questions, 90 seconds each. They're going to hold up cards that tell you, they're going to hold them really high actually, so you can see what you have left. It's 1 minute, 15, and then stop. We'll have 4 of those questions, and then we have 2 questions that will be from the audience. If we have more time, we will have more there. We have opening remarks for 2 minutes and then closing remarks for 2 minutes. All these questions were put together by the coalition, and I am trying to not stutter too much as I read them. So first of all, great to see you, and thank you for being here. And please, opening statement.
Well, good evening, everybody. Great to be here at LaGuardia Community College, and great to see all of you out here tonight. You know, the Asian American community, I think we've come a long way. I remember back in 1989, I had just gotten out of college, and there was a big mayor's election going on at that time, and I was part of a coalition called Asian Americans for a Better New York. And we decided to have our own mayoral forum back then. We invited all 4 of the Democrats who were running in the primary in 1989, and I personally sent the invitations back then, and we didn't even get a single response. Not one single response from any of the people running for mayor. And now, fast forward, it's 2013. This is the 2nd Asian American Mayoral Forum. It's well attended. We've got candidates coming. And like, I'm here in front of you talking about being mayor of New York City. It's a great, great city. It's a lot of progress that we've made. And I'm just proud to be part of this very important forum. I know we've got important issues to deal with. As comptroller now, going into my 4th year, I've had the privilege of serving all New Yorkers. Had a chance to really review each and every single agency and function of city government in and out. And I know that going across the street, going to City Hall, if you gave me the chance, I would hit the ground running just because of my in-depth knowledge of all aspects of city government, with an understanding that not everybody in New York is treated fairly, and that we need greater representation, certainly for the APA community that has long been missing a strong voice in government. And so with that, my 15 seconds is just about up.
Wait, are you pointing to her to put up signs? All right, Comptroller. Let's talk about this. The first subject area has to do with representation in your staff if you were to become mayor. As you know, right now there are 10 deputy mayors and top administration officials at the moment. How many would you like to have that are of API descent?
Well, more than there are now. There aren't any. And in fact, Asian Americans, I think we know, have been long underrepresented in all levels of government here in New York City and in many other parts of the country. This is something that we need to start flexing our muscles about. And whether it be people running for mayor, or nowadays there are lots of people running for city council, we just have to take part. Whether it be in this forum or getting out to register to vote, or helping fellow Asian Americans register to vote, this is what we need to do. 12 years ago, I was the first Asian American to be elected to the city council. At the time, I watched all of my colleagues break up into the Black and Latino caucus, the Jewish caucus, the Italian caucus met, the Irish caucus got together, the women's caucus met, the lesbian and gay caucus met, and I was the only one left in the room. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with myself. So I called a meeting of the Asian caucus, and went to that meeting and discussed issues of grave importance to Asian American New Yorkers with myself. And by the end of that meeting, I was elected chair of the City Council's Asian Caucus. It was unanimous. Today, we have 2 Asian Americans in the City Council, and yet it's still not quite enough, because we are 13% of the population and growing. And if all things are equal, we should have 5, 6, perhaps even 7 members of the city council. That's just in an elected capacity. But on the appointed level, it's hard to ask a mayoral candidate, how many deputy mayors are you going to have who are Asian Americans? We don't know how many deputy mayors there will be.
Let's say there's 10. How many would you pick?
There's not going to be a quota system. I'm going to look at the best and brightest from all parts of the city. The fact of the matter is, right now in my leadership team, we've got 750 professionals in the comptroller's office. I've got 8 deputy comptrollers, and I've had 2 deputy comptrollers who are Asian Americans, not selected because they were Asian American, but because they were the best in their field. And at City Hall, putting together a diverse administration, one that looks like all of New York, will be among my top priorities.
So staying on that, and we only have 15 seconds, I'm sorry, because we ran out of time here on this first question, but I'm going to ask you the same questions I asked the previous candidate, Mr. Liu, and that is, when it comes to the strategic importance of diversity, long talked about in business, talk about it in running the city.
The strategic importance of running the city is
diversity.
Diversity in running the city is just secondhand. I mean, look, you think about the fact that we haven't had a strong voice for a long time. It wasn't until the 21st century that we even had an elected legislator in the city of New York. I mean, look, this is not Omaha, Nebraska. And no offense to anybody who might be from Omaha here. But this is New York City, and think about it, we didn't even get an elected legislator until the year 2001, the 21st century. So you ask about why is it important to have diversity. There are lots of things that government falls short on because people don't understand. You know, you have examples of education where we have immigrants who come here and they may well be versed in science, social studies, and math, and yet because of the language barrier, they're not able to they're not able to continue their education continuously because this administration currently has had a policy of immersion as opposed to bilingual education. You look at the small business owners in our communities, you know, people have different ways of serving food. And yet the Department of Health, because of the lack of diversity at the top levels of city government, they think food can only be served one way. And every other way has to be contaminated with germs. I mean, it's because it's a lack of understanding of people in the community, things that have been done for thousands of years and people have survived, and for some reason the Department of Health thinks it knows better than anybody else, and therefore gives all these kinds of tickets and summonses and closes down businesses unnecessarily. This is why we need to have diversity and understanding in all levels of government, certainly New York City government.
The second area, immigrant services. As you know, the immigrant population in New York City is very well told. English as a second language, you have English proficiency as an issue. How would you support an expansion or a support of immigrant services for immigrant New Yorkers?
Well, I was proud when I was elected to the City Council to introduce as my very first proposed law, we call it an introductory bill, a bill that would greatly expand interpretive and translation services for people in New York City in certain key agencies that really had a critical role in serving people. Human Resources Administration, Administration for Children's Services, Department of Health. These are key agencies that back in 2002, when I first started in the City Council, did not provide a whole lot of service in languages other than English and in some cases Spanish. And yet we had a growing proportion of the city who come from all different parts of the world, many Asian countries, coming here with significant limited English proficiency. And so my first bill required these agencies it wasn't about translation services, it was about not discriminating against people simply because they didn't speak English well. Everybody loves to talk about the fact that New York City is the capital of the world. The mayor, all the elected officials here, but no one says New York City is the capital of the English-speaking world. We say New York City is the capital of the world, and there are other global cities in the world that are able to serve their citizens in multiple languages. No reason why the city of New York could not do so as well. So that's why I was able to expand multi-language services in many city agencies.
What will you do next? What other services would be key?
I think all services in the city of New York, given that we have greatly expanded technology.
Related to immigrant services.
Related to immigrant
Yes,
services?
related to immigrant services.
Look, we have, I am hopeful, based on the president's own comments in his State of the Union speech, the first time ever a president has included comprehensive immigration reform in his speech, that we will pass a comprehensive immigration reform that will not only keep families together, that will provide people with a path towards citizenship, but when that immigration reform occurs, passes in Washington, I think it'll be a tremendous boon to so many people here in New York City. But that's not going to come without challenges, because we'll have that many more people who are now brought out of the shadows with this national legislation, and we're going to need a whole array of services to help these immigrants become adjusted to being in the workforce and coming out of the shadows. And I know a number of the organizations who are co-sponsors of this forum are already gearing up their services so that nobody gets left behind, and that's exactly what city government needs to do more of. The funding must be there, and the city should not try to take over some of these functions, because I think we all know well that community-based organizations in almost all cases are able to more effectively and efficiently provide these kinds of services, particularly to the immigrant community. That's something that city government should respect and just give them the funding so they can do their job even better.
I want to move to the third section, which is public education. Three topics: bullying, the lack of cultural sensitivity and support services. Third, the struggle that some parents, immigrant parents, have as they deal with the educational system. Of those three, which one would you address, and how would you pay for it?
I'd address all of them. You know, the issue of bullying in schools, the fact that there's not enough sensitivity even in the school bureaucracy today, and the fact that parents are often left out. I've got 90 seconds to do this?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Welcome to the...
First and foremost, well, look, we see a queue of candidates lining up, right? So long as we have a little bit of time, let me just answer this as thoroughly as I can. On the issue of bullying, we still have a huge problem in our schools. When I was a kid, I remember in the 5th grade, and being kind of like the only Asian kid in my school, and my friends, thinking that they were doing me a favor. Every time they served rice at hot lunch, the entire class would pass their rice to me because they thought they were doing me a favor. It wasn't that pleasant. And yet today, decades later, I'm an old guy at this point. We still see, in the aftermath of September 11th, no group has been harassed more inside and outside of school than the Sikh community, where our Sikh community, our fellow Asian Americans, have been targeted with all sorts of harassment, and more importantly, the Department of Education has ignored many of their complaints and concerns. That's something that cannot happen. That's why I was a champion of the Dignity for All Students Act, that not only, obviously, bullying and harassment is prohibited in schools, but it forced the Department of Education bureaucracy to start paying attention to the problem and tracking the kinds of difficulties and incidents that would occur. And that goes hand in hand with the cultural sensitivity that, for example, it was completely absent for the Sikh students, two-thirds of whom have claimed regular harassment inside their own schools. And as far as parental engagement goes, this is a problem that is not just in the Asian American community. It's a problem for all parents in the school system nowadays, where the Bloomberg administration just basically doesn't listen to the parents. They don't listen to teachers, they don't listen to the principals, they don't listen to anybody except expensive outside consultants that they bring in from time to time. But the parental engagement in terms of limited English proficiency parents, they have to be engaged. When I was a kid, I did all the translations for my mom. And so, look, I spent my share of time in the principal's office. But my mom used to love getting notes from the principal's office.
Your mom
Because
used
I
to
did all
love-
the translation. But that should not be.
So what did
That
you
should
say?
not be the way-
When you translated, what did you say?
Listen. I mean, the principal.
John
according to
did
my-
really well today.
That's.
I'm sending him home. He did so well.
The principal would send notes home to me, but I translated, and my mom was always very happy about those reports.
All right, Mr. Lee,
But obviously,
that is great.
we should directly engage our parents today to make sure they know exactly what's going on with their kids. And now that my own son is 12 years old in 7th grade in school, I want to know exactly what's
Is he
going on.
translating for you? Like father, like son. The last section is housing, Mr. Liu, and you have lived these decades that you talk about in the city of New York. You've seen the ebbs and flows in this city, up and down, and now it's up, up, up. 500,000 new residents expected in the coming years. How are you going to create new affordable housing and maintain the stock of affordable housing in the city?
So the city's population was as high as close to 11 million people back in the 40s and 50s. There was a period of decline until we kind of hit rock bottom in the 1970s, and then since 1980, the population of our city has been increasing by about 500,000 per decade. And so we've grown about 1.5 million from 7 million to almost 8.5 million today. And that trend is projected to continue for the next 2 decades for a growth of another 1 million people. What we need is far more affordable housing construction. The Bloomberg administration set out a very ambitious goal to build affordable housing. Halfway in between, they kind of changed it to building as well as rehabbing current housing. What we need to do is have a comprehensive program to not only rehab current affordable housing that is kind of going to fall off the rolls of affordable housing, but we actually need a robust construction plan going forward. I've got a very simple and yet extensive plan to use mandatory inclusionary zoning that basically unlocks the air rights and the economic value in our air rights so that we can use that value to build far more affordable housing to take care of not only the people who already live in the city of New York, but also the million people who are on their way. The fact that we are a growing city, our economic and tax base is growing. And there are ways that we can channel that kind of resource, that capital, to ensure that we continue to be a world-class city. And having decent places for people to live clearly is at the top of the priorities there.
Mr. Liu, I've received a note that your campaign says you need to leave, but we have options. You can take one question, you can finish with closing remarks, whatever you'd like.
Let me,
One question?
yeah, I'm going to get yelled at later on. Yes.
All right, thank
This
you
is
for
the
taking...
problem with multiple forums, you
Yeah.
know, and I know that
I know it's
my
very
rivals
busy.
want to get here, but they're at different forums.
I know you're busy, so thank you so much. Abdul Rahman, please.
Yes. I am Abdur Rahman, a member of Saya CDC. I am a low-income homeowner who lives in Woodside, Queens. I am struggling to keep my home from being foreclosed. Regulated basement gives some income to low-income homeowners like me to save my house. It also gives tenants more affordable housing options. As mayor, will you support reform to the building code to the legalized basement apartment in New York City, and what else will you do to support homeowners? Thank you.
I thank you very much for the question and also for your courage to stand up before everybody here and talk about that issue. The foreclosure crisis is something that has hit the rest of the country very hard, but it has not skipped our city. We have tens of thousands of families that have gone through foreclosure proceedings and are still going through them. When I first took office as city comptroller, we started harnessing every power that my office had to get the banks in New York City to do the right thing, to help more families modify their loans. Families want to pay their loans back. But just as we bailed out the banks on the backs of taxpayers in this country, we needed the banks to step up and help families stay afloat as well. And so I've been very aggressive using the clout of our pension funds as well as our purchasing power as a customer, New York City being a customer of all these major banks. My challenge, though, has been to get the Bloomberg administration to cooperate. I'm a member of the Banking Commission. I'm one of 3 members. I've got 1 vote, and Mayor Bloomberg has the other 2 votes. And so every kind of initiative we've put forth to try to get the banks to do the right thing, we've been stymied. As mayor, we'd have complete control over the banking commission, and I think we can get many of the banks to do the right thing and to help families stay in their homes. But I think this gentleman is also touching upon a greater issue that's particular to our community, and that is that there are a lot of people in the APA community who need help. And you know, the common law nowadays, or has been for a long time, is that APAs are successful, everybody's smart, everybody makes a lot of money, nobody needs any help. It's the model minority myth. It doesn't work, and it's not true. We have challenges like any other community. And when we allow the model minority myth to perpetuate itself, or let others perpetuate that myth, at the end of the day, it means less resources for people who need those resources in our community. So I know that, I believe that's part of the platform here. We need to do everything we can to combat the model minority myth, not only to make sure that we get our fair share, because we certainly pay our fair share in taxes, but also to counter that model minority myth, because it's very divisive and it pits us against other minority communities. We don't ever want that to happen.
Thank you for your response.
Yes.
All right, so Mr. Liu, closing remarks, please.
For 1 minute?
2 minutes, if you
2
can.
minutes.
They're just over there saying, you know, you got to go out and
right.
make sure to be respectful of your time.
I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Again, I'm very proud to be here, not only as a candidate, but to see this kind of forum take place. This is the kind of discussion we have to have much more of. And when I'm mayor of New York City, everybody in this room will be very much engaged in how this city is run. Now, running for election is not easy in this city. It's, you know, it's been tough for the last year and a half. They've come after me with everything in the kitchen sink. Now, nobody has been able to impugn the work that I've done as comptroller. My audits, the careful contract scrutiny, the investment record of our pension funds, the ability for our city to access the capital markets, which I've taken advantage of for the good of our taxpayers. But instead, you know, there are certain powers that be that have impugned me on my campaign fundraising. I fundraise like any other candidate in this city. I wish I didn't have to fundraise. I wish I was like Mike Bloomberg. I could write my campaign a big check and be done with that. But I am like any other candidate, and I fundraise. Now, I fundraise in accordance with the rules. And even though they've thrown all this stuff at me, they've investigated my campaign fundraising for years and years and years. After all this, they still have nothing to show for it except some collateral damage that is most unfortunate. I'm very proud of the campaign we've run, and we're going to continue to do the right thing. And as much as it's never easy to run for an election here in New York City or anywhere, we're going to win this election. In 2001, I ran for city council, and people said to me, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Because I think we need a voice." And they said, "Well, you know, but no Asian American has ever been elected to the city council. You can't win." And I said, "Well, at some point, somebody's got to get elected, and I think we have a great strategy." And we worked hard in 2001, and thanks to a lot of people in this room, we won the election for city council in 2001. And I became the first Asian American to serve in the New York City Council. Fast forward 8 years to 2009. I wasn't going to run for city council again because I was adamantly opposed to the term limit extension, which subverted the will of the people in the city. That's another story. I ran for city controller, and people immediately said to me, "Well, the people of this city aren't ready for somebody like you." I said, "What are you talking about? You know, I think I've got the qualifications. I've got my private sector experience. I've got a knowledge of city government. I think I can be a good controller." They said, "Yeah, but you can't win." I said, "Why can't I win?" And they said, "Well, because no one like you has ever been elected citywide in New York City." And I said, "Well, I think we've got a good strategy. We're going to work hard. And with the support of many people in this room, we won that election in 2009, and I became the first citywide elected Asian American official in the city of New York. And now it's 2013, and I'm running for mayor of New York City. And people are amazingly saying to me, "Why are you doing this? You can't win." And I'm asking them, well, what do you mean? Why can't I win? And they're saying, well, because it's never been done. And I'm like, well, just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean we're not going to win this election. We are going to win this election. We're going to change the city. We're going to level the playing field, and we will show them what the APA community has to offer. Thank you so much for being part of this.